You know those videos of baptisms that we showed earlier, the very first one that we showed was a man named Rico. Rico comes to our church, and we first met Rico because he was a part of the homeless community. And Miss Kelly and our food pantry team worked with him. And then recently, Rico got into a house, and he's on his feet, and he's following Jesus, and he just got baptized. And it's because of you and your generosity that allows this place to exist, that allows stories like that to happen. So thank you so much for your generosity. Give yourselves a big hand today. Man, sometimes we can't stop the bleeding. People hurt people, and I've been hurt before. I have been on the wrong side of other people's gossip. I've been on the wrong side of other people's words. I've been on the wrong side of other people's lies, rejection, betrayal, and hurt. People have hurt me, but I'm not under any delusions today because I know that I've also hurt other people many times in the same ways. And many times when you and I experience hurt at the hands of other people, we all develop these reactions in our life, like the reactions of jealousy and mistrust, the reactions of anger and negativity and impatience and isolation. And then you and I bring all of these scars and all this baggage and all of these reactions into our relationships and into our interactions with other people. And as you guessed it, many times that doesn't go so well. And so sometimes we hurt each other because that's usually easier than doing the right thing. And the right thing is to always restrain the most selfish parts of who we are. And the most selfish parts of who we are is our pride, our anger, our revenge, and our retaliation. And when someone hurts us, there's usually this fine line that we all try to walk. Because as people who love Jesus and people who follow Jesus, we want to forgive people because holding on to a grudge feels dark to us, and holding on to anger feels evil to us, and holding on to unforgiveness feels unholy to us, and so we want to forgive people. But this is the dilemma that most people who love Jesus and follow Jesus face when someone hurts us, and notice this on the screen. I need to let this hurt go and completely forgive, but I also need to protect the health of my mind and my emotions and my relationships from this constant conflict. I need to forgive, but I also need some distance in my life. I want to let this hurt go because we all do realize that you and I are never more like Jesus than when we forgive someone who's hurt us. And we are never more unlike Jesus than when we don't forgive someone else who has hurt us. A lot of times when we come to church, you and I have this idea in our mind that this is what it means to be like Jesus. I stopped listening to rock and roll music. I stopped saying cuss words. I stopped smoking. I stopped drinking. I stopped chewing. I stopped dating girls who do the same thing and all those kind of things. And I try to look like Jesus. But the Bible teaches us over and over again that the way to really be like Jesus and the way other people can see God in us is how we treat other people and how we relate to other people. The Bible is not basic instructions before leaving earth. You ever seen that bumper sticker? Well, it's the Bible, but that's not what the Bible is. The Bible is a story. It's a narrative. It's a novel. It's the story of God, and God gave us this story so you and I could learn how to have a relationship with Jesus, but also how to have proper relationships with each other. Because if you hold on to your anger, no one's ever going to see God in you. If you hold on to your revenge, no one's ever going to see Jesus in you. If you hold on to your retaliation, then people don't see the grace and the kindness and the love of God in your heart. And so most of the New Testament and the Old Testament is teaching you and I how to love and how to forgive and how to properly relate to other people. So you are never more like Jesus in this life than when you forgive someone who's deeply hurt you. And you are never more unlike Jesus, even though no one else would ever blame you. You are never more unlike Jesus than when you don't forgive and you hold on to your anger. But how can I forgive someone in my life if they keep crossing lines? How can I forgive someone in my life if they hurt me over and over and over again, and they cause this wound and they cause this bleeding, and I just can't get it to stop? And so each week in this series, we've talked about why we need to set boundaries, because a healthy boundary is crucial to you and I forgiving other people in our life that's deeply hurt us. And each week we've talked about different steps that we need to take to set a healthy boundary in our life. And this series is called the Trespass series, how to love, forgive, and set healthy boundaries in our life with people who have hurt us. And the reason why we call this the Trespass series is because in the Bible there's sins and then there's trespasses. We sin against God, but then we sin against other people, and the Bible calls that trespassing because it's like we cross lines and we go into areas of people's lives that we're not supposed to go when we hurt them. And so this series is called the Trespass series. The first week we talked about the first step, and that was this: in order to set a boundary, you have to know your limits with certain people. Certain people will always take you to your limits and past your limits. And if you don't know your your limits with certain people, then you won't be able to set an effective boundary. Last week, the second step we talked about was this. You have to practice mental strength and mental discipline. Because sometimes people are going to hurt you. You're going to set a boundary with those people and space in your life between those people, and then you're going to start to feel false guilt because you think that boundary is making them feel rejected or making them feel a certain way. You start to feel sorry for them even though they've hurt you over and over again. You let your boundary down. They cross those lines again. They hurt you again. It opens up the wound again, and you can't stop the bleeding. And so sometimes in order to forgive and love, you have to set a boundary and stick to your guns. In order to do that, you have to practice some mental strength and mental discipline. This morning, we move on with step 3. If you're still with me, say I'm still with you. When I was around 6 or 7 years old, I guess, my parents were building a brand new house in Moss Bluff. This was way back in the 80s. And my dad was an estimator for a big construction company back then. And so him and his buddies did most of the work on that house. And so we were at that place. We were at that land every single day, every single evening while my dad was working. And so in order for us kids to have something to do, one day my dad put up this little basketball goal on the side of the brick wall. But in the backyard, there was also these big, massive dirt piles from the dirt work and these little concrete rocks from the long carport and driveway. And these little concrete rocks, they weren't like real rocks. They were kind of airy. They were kind of fragile. When you picked them up, they were just kind of break in your hand. And so one day, me and my best friend who just lived down the road, we were excited. We were going to live next to each other when this house got finished. So we decided to play hide and go seek behind those big dirt piles. But this is how we tagged each other. We'd pick up those concrete rocks and throw them at each other. So that's how we did it, man. We would just tag each other. So that became a game of kind of like G.I. Joe, where he's hiding behind this dirt pile and I'm hiding behind that dirt pile. And Kent picks up a rock to throw at me and I pick up a rock to throw at him. Little concrete rocks. They're not hurting anybody. And so at one moment, I'm looking down on the ground trying to find some more concrete rocks, and I've used all of mine and I can't find any. And then I look up and I notice that my friend Kent had picked up a different kind of rock. And it wasn't a small concrete rock, it was a big rock. But he didn't mean to throw it at me. He meant to throw it at my dirt pile to knock some dirt into my eyes. But he threw it really good, and it was heading straight for my head. Now, all I had to do was just move out the way, but I was froze, like a deer in headlights. Or better yet, like a Pentecostal girl from DeQuincy going to prom with a Baptist boy from DeQuincy, and after the dance, we find a dirt road, and 5 minutes later, her parents and the cops show up, kind of like that, froze like that. You know what I'm saying? Not that I'm speaking from experience, I'm just saying, kind of like that. So, man, I just didn't move. I'm just watching this rock come straight from my head, just kind of looking at it cross-eyed, man, and it hits me right on top of my head. Now, today, I'm 5'11" because I have heels on, my boots. I'm usually 5'10", but in high school, I was 5'11" because I had hair, man, and a lot of hair, and it was big. I could have smuggled dope in my hair, Vanilla Ice 2.0 back then. Y'all remember Consort hairspray? Consort, you know what I'm talking about? Man, you spray your hair, and it doesn't move. My dad, they called my dad Spray and Ray. Man, he had a hair helmet. He looked like a car salesman and a pastor at the same time. I remember one day we left church and there was a hurricane outside, man. Everybody's hair was flying everywhere. My dad walked outside and not one hair on his head moved. Consort hairspray, man. Well, anyway, that rock went through my hair helmet and it busted my head wide open, man. Split my head open. Blood went everywhere. We couldn't stop the bleeding. Finally, after a couple hours, we got it to stop. Well, me and my friend were bored, so we go back outside. Let's do something safe. Let's play basketball. So we're playing basketball. I'm going up for a layup. He accidentally hits me in my back, and I go head first in that brick wall. Splits the same spot open again, bleeding again. I can't stop the bleeding. So finally, I get it to stop, and then that night, my parents are like, y'all aren't going back outside again. Let's watch a movie. Because back then in the 80s, we didn't have PlayStations, we didn't have iPads, we didn't have smartphones, we didn't have an Xbox. All we had was a VHS VCR, and we had stacks of tapes on stacks of tapes because we love movies. And so I wanted to watch my favorite movie, and back then my favorite movie was Rocky III, and I could quote every single line to that movie. Clubber Lang, what's your prediction for tonight's fight? My prediction? Pain. I mean, I love that movie. So anyway, I'm excited, man. I'm watching Rocky beat Clubber Lang, Mr. T in the rematch, and I'm getting excited, and I fall off my parents' bed, and guess what I land on? My head. Blood goes everywhere. I busted open again. And the reason why I couldn't get it to stop bleeding was because of this. And notice this morning. You're still with me? Say, I'm still with you. Because I didn't give my injury the proper time it needed to heal before it got attacked again. The reason why that wound wouldn't heal, and the reason why it was bleeding and I couldn't stop the bleeding, is because when it got attacked, I wouldn't give it the proper time and the proper space for it to heal up before it got attacked again. And sometimes the pain in our hearts needs the same thing. Everyone look right here. You have been caused major pain in this life by other people, and so have I. And we're not under any delusions today. You've also hurt other people. So have I. But sometimes when we experience pain, we have to have space and time for that bleeding to stop and for that wound to heal, or we'll never forgive. You have hurt me. I need space and time to heal, or I'll never forgive you. You have caused me pain in this life. I need space and time to heal, or I'm always going to hang on to my revenge and my desire to get you back and my desire to retaliate. And so sometimes it's healthy to have a boundary, because that's what a healthy boundary does. A healthy boundary gives you space and time to heal so you can stop the bleeding. Amen? Now, in the Old Testament, in the book of Judges, we find this fascinating story. Now, if you're here this morning and you're not sure if the Bible's true or if the Bible's real or if the Bible's God's word, we totally understand that. And you don't have to believe all that before you belong here. This is a community of love and grace, and you can belong before you believe. But you should still read the Bible for stories like this, mainly because this is interesting. You can't get anything like this on TV today. When we read this story, it's like a Quentin Tarantino movie. It is fascinating. It's hard to believe this is even in the Bible. It is riveting. It's really awesome. And this story is about Samson. Samson was an Israelite and one of Israel's biggest and strongest heroes, biggest and strongest warriors. Back then, the Jews, or the nation of Israel, had a mortal enemy, and that was the Philistines. They were always at war with each other, constant battles, constant fights. Samson was always fighting against them. They were always fighting against Samson. But one day, Samson spots a young Philistine girl, and man, she just does it for him. He thinks that she is some kind of fine, and he tells his parents, I want to marry that Philistine girl. Well, they disagree because she's not from Israel. She's not a Jew. She's a Philistine. But Samson says, I'm going to marry her anyway, because Samson does whatever Samson wants to do. That's what gets him in trouble. Not that he married her, but because Samson does whatever he wants to do. So he gets in trouble. So Samson throws this big pre-wedding party, and he invites all the Philistines to join in the wedding ceremony. And he tells them that if they can answer this riddle that he gives them, and he gives them a very hard riddle to solve, that he's going to reward them with new expensive clothes and new expensive rewards. So they can't solve the riddle. So they go to his bride-to-be, his fiancée, and they say, hey, if you'll trick Samson into telling you the answer, and then you come and you tell us the answer, then we'll go back and we'll tell Samson the answer, and we'll get all this money and all these rewards. And so the Bible says that Samson finally told her the answer to the riddle because she was tormenting him with her constant nagging. So anyway, she's nagging him. He gives her the answer. She gives the Philistines the answer. They come back. They tell Samson, we figured it out, but he knows what's going on. He gets so angry that he kills 30 men right there on the spot. Kills 30 of them. Well, after that, he's so mad, he goes home to cool off. In the meantime, this girl's father he was supposed to marry, he's scared of Samson, so he gives her away to someone else. It was actually Samson's best man. So when Samson finally cools off and he decides to return to get his bride-to-be, he finds out her father has given her away to marry someone else. I'm mad and I'm hurt. Notice his response, Judges 15, starting in verse 3 on the screen. Samson said, this time I cannot be blamed for everything I'm going to do to you Philistines. Now that makes no sense at all. You can't blame me for what I'm about to do. Everyone look right here. You're always to blame for what you do. You can't use how other people treat you as an excuse to justify what you do. You can't use your stress as an excuse to justify your words that hurt. You can't use anything to justify what you do. You can be blamed for what you do because you're the one who did it. And Samson should be blamed right here. He says, he then went out and he caught 300 foxes. He tied their tails together in pairs. He fastened a torch to each pair of tails, and then he lit the torches on fire, and he let the foxes run through the grain fields of the Philistines. He burned all their grain to the ground, including the sheaves and the uncut grain. He also destroyed their vineyards and their olive groves. Again, his response was this, you hurt me, it's only fair if I hurt you back. You get me, I'm going to get you back. And so then the Philistines retaliate against Samson by taking this young lady and her father and burning them at the stake. Breaks his heart. Breaks his heart. So now he's hurt again. So notice his response again. Judges 15, 7 through 8. Because you did this, Samson promised, I will not rest until I take my revenge on you. So he attacked the Philistines with great fury, and he killed many of them. And then he went to live in a cave in a rock at Etam. You hurt me, so I'm going to hurt you. They go to this rock. They capture him, but it's a trick. Samson lets them capture him because his revenge is still burning hot in his heart. And once he lets them take him as prisoner, he's going to get free and he's going to cause some damage. Notice what happens in Judges 15, starting in verse 14. If you're still with me, I'm still with you. As Samson arrived at Lehi, the Philistines came shouting in triumph. But the Spirit of the Lord came powerfully upon Samson, and he snapped the ropes in his arms as if they were burnt strands of flax, and they fell from his wrist. He then found the jawbone of a recently killed donkey. He picked it up and he killed 1,000 Philistines with it. Then Samson said, with the jawbone of a donkey, I've piled them in heaps. With the jawbone of a donkey, I've killed 1,000 men. Throw up that picture on the screen. This is a jawbone of a donkey. And so Samson is hurt. And the only thing he can think about is paying them back and getting them back. And so he picks up the jawbone of a donkey and on the spot kills 1,000 men right there. And then he turns around and walks away singing a song about it. With the jawbone of a donkey, I've piled them heaps upon heaps. With the jawbone of a donkey, I've killed 1,000 men. He's singing a song. If this is not a Tarantino movie, I don't know what is. Amen? So the bleeding doesn't seem to stop. After this, Samson falls in love again with another Philistine girl. He didn't learn his lesson. This time, her name was Delilah. Y'all remember that? Man, somebody's alarm's going off. Y'all heard that? Man, that's not Jesus. Everybody just relax, okay? And so Samson had this massive strength, and the Philistines wanted to find out what's the source of his strength. Why is he so much stronger than everyone else? Well, the source of his strength was his obedience to God to keep his Nazarene vow to never cut his hair. God said, if you ever cut your hair, you're going to lose your strength. I want you to keep this promise to me as a Nazarene. Keep this vow. If you never cut your hair, then you're going to be strong. Well, the Philistines tell Delilah, find out what the secret is. So he tells her one thing that's not true. They try it. He knows what's going on. He tells her another thing that's not true. They try it. He knows what's going on. And then finally one night when he's really tired, he just kind of gives in and says, my strength is in my hair. If I lose my hair, I'm not going to have any strength whatsoever. So she tells the Philistines that night as he's sleeping, they sneak in, they cut his hair, they bind him, they take him as a prisoner, they pluck both of his eyes out. And then notice what happens next. If you're still with me, say I'm still with you. Then Samson prayed to the Lord, Sovereign Lord, remember me again. Oh God, please strengthen me just one more time. But why? With one blow, let me pay back the Philistines for the loss of my 2 eyes. Then Samson put his hands on the 2 center pillars that held up the temple. He pushed against them with both of his hands, and he prayed, let me die with the Philistines. And the temple crashed down on the Philistines' rulers and all the people. So he killed more people that day when he died than his entire lifetime. The wreckage, the damage, the bleeding, the revenge. You hurt me. What's natural, what no one is going to blame me for, is if I get you back. I'm even going to ask God to help me. We do that secretly sometimes, don't we? Or we secretly wish God would get them back for us. God, please give them a fat tire. They offended me. God, please cause them to lose their job. They said something bad about me. And you may not even say that, but secretly you would smile if it did happen. See how dark we can be sometimes? Somebody hurts us and we'll lay awake at night trying to figure out how to get them back in public in front of everyone, take pictures and put it on social media. That's how we are. We don't want to just pay people back. We want to get you back worse. We want to get you back so bad that you never try this again. This is what Samson did. I'm going to get you back. And all because they hurt him and he hurt them back. And because of that, the wound never heals. The bleeding never stops. If you're still with me, say I'm still with you. Okay, so this morning, let's compare something for a minute. Notice Samson's last words to God and to this world about his enemies. Oh God, please strengthen me one more time, that with one blow let me pay them back for the loss of my 2 eyes. I mean, who would blame him, right? They plucked out his eyes. His first fiancee, they burned her to death, killed her. Who would blame him? But everyone look right here. Our calling as people who love Jesus and even as humanity is not to be revenge seekers. Not every story in the Bible is given for us to model. We're not supposed to follow after Samson's example. He's just there to teach us about lessons of compromise. But there is a story in the Bible that gives us a good example to follow. Samson's last words to God about his enemies and to the world was, give me strength so I can kill them and pay them back. But here's another story. Let's compare it. Completely different. This man that we find in the New Testament, his name is Jesus. And Jesus has enemies, the Roman government. and the Jewish religious Pharisees and the establishment of his day. They can't stand Jesus. And one night they find him in a garden, so full of anxiety and stress because he's carrying the weight of our sin on his shoulders that he's bleeding drops of blood. So, Tony, is that possible? Sometimes when you get so stressed out in this life, there's a medical condition that causes your capillaries to explode and seep into your sweat glands. Jesus was under an intense amount of anxiety, an intense amount of pressure, an intense amount of stress in the garden before they arrested him because he knew what was waiting for him. When Jesus was 11 years old, you don't find this in the Bible, you find this in history books. When Jesus was 11 years old, there was this massive Jewish uprising against the Roman government near his hometown. When he was a little boy, the Romans captured all those zealots and crucified them and lined them all the way on the streets going back and forth from Nazareth, back and forth from Nazareth. So every day as a little boy, when Jesus was going to the temple, walking down this street from Nazareth, he would see dead people hanging on crosses. This was their billboard to the world. Don't mess with Rome. And Jesus knew what was waiting for him his entire life. So in the garden, he's sweating drops of blood. They don't stop there. They send a massive amount of Roman guards. Anyone ever seen the movie 300? This is Sparta. Man, I love that movie. You know how massive those guys were? Well, that's what it was for the Roman guards back then. These Roman guards were like Spartans. Man, these were the best of the best. Only a small percentage of men in the world at that time could be a Roman guard. And so they sent a massive amount of troops to arrest one person. 6'1", 200-pound Jesus Christ. So Tony, how do you know that? Because anytime someone was buried, they would take half their weight of spices and prepare their bodies. And they took Jesus 100 pounds of spices to prepare his body, which meant he was a 200-pound man. The average height was probably 6'1". The book of Isaiah says he wasn't much to look at. He didn't look like a threat. He didn't look like a danger. But the Romans sent all these guards. They arrest him. The first thing they do is strip all of his clothes off, naked, in front of thousands of people. And then these big guards put a blindfold around his eyes after they jam a poisonous crown of thorns on his head. They spit in his face, and these guards punch him closed fist over and over again and mock him. Since you're a prophet, tell us who's hitting you. They flogged him. They whipped his back. They ripped the skin off his back. They nailed him to wood. And then Jesus starts to pray to God about his enemies. Samson said this, "Oh God, one more time, give me my strength back so I can kill him and pay him back." But notice what Jesus says in Luke 23:34 on the screen. You're still with me, so I'm still with you. Jesus said, "Father, get him. Get him for me, Dad. Help me. Send some angels down here. Call down fire from heaven. I'm innocent." Jesus said, "Father, forgive them. They don't really know what they're doing," as the soldiers were gambling for his clothes by throwing dice. They nail his hands to wood. I've told you before, when they did that, they crushed his median nerve. If you don't know what that feels like, if you can imagine taking a pair of pliers and mutilating your funny bone, that's what it felt like when they put the nails in his hands. They put his feet on top of each other and put a 9-inch nail through his feet. Every time he would breathe, he would push himself up and pull himself up. It would rip his skin. He would exhale, let himself down. It would rip more skin. And he did that for hours and hours and hours while Roman soldiers were casting lots, gambling for his clothes to make fun of him. And the one thing he could think to say was, "God, forgive them. They don't even know what they're doing." Now, the opposite of the act of forgiveness is not unforgiveness. The opposite of forgiveness is actually the act of revenge. If Samson would have forgiven the Philistines, then he would not have gotten revenge. And if Jesus would have not forgiven the Romans and the Pharisees, then he would have gotten revenge. Now, understanding all that, let's try to apply that to our life this morning. If you're still with me, say I'm still with you. If you and I are ever going to heal properly from the pain that other people have caused us, then we have to set boundaries. And this is one of the best ways that I've ever understood what a boundary is. And notice this on the screen this morning. A boundary is when you intentionally create distance and space between you and the person you've had painful conflicts with. And the reason why setting clear boundaries is essential to you forgiving them is so your injured heart and your injured feelings and your injured self-esteem and your injured confidence and your injured relationships can have time and space to heal and stop bleeding before they get attacked again. And the reason why this is so important is because we all know this. I used to play basketball in high school. I still do. I love basketball. I think basketball is life. But I can remember busting up my ankles to the point to where they snap, crackle, and pop every time I walk around the house today. I can't sneak up on anyone because all you hear is pop, pop, pop when I walk. Toes, ankles, everything. And when I would sprain my ankle and it looked like someone put a softball under my skin, I didn't keep playing ball. I let it heal so I wouldn't re-injure it. The reason why my head kept bleeding is because I didn't give it time to stop and heal before it got attacked again. And your heart needs the same space, and your heart needs the same time. People have lied to us. People have abused us. People have cheated on us. People have talked about us. People have gossiped about us. People have rejected us. People have left us out. People have deeply, deeply hurt other people that we loved, and we're wounded, and we're bleeding, and our gut reaction is to get them back. You hurt me, so I hurt you. But if you truly want to forgive, sometimes you have to push away. Sometimes you need space. Sometimes you need distance so that wound in your heart can heal and stop bleeding so you don't get revenge and so you don't retaliate, because the next time you get attacked, and you will, now you're going to be that much stronger. Amen? Yeah, go ahead. Give it up. That's pretty good. We need space and distance, and this is why I noticed this morning. Hurting people hurt other people. This is why when you create space between you and them so you can heal from your hurt, you'll be less likely to retaliate. If you're hurting, you're going to hurt other people. And one of the ways to heal from your hurt is to get away from them, to create space between you and them, to draw a line, a border, a boundary so you can have time to heal. Because if you remain in your hurt, you're going to retaliate every single time. Does that make sense to you this morning? And so we've covered these different steps, and this morning we cover the third step to setting a healthy boundary, and this may be the most crucial, and this is what it is, and notice this morning. In order to set up a clear boundary with the purpose of healing and offering forgiveness, then we must understand what forgiveness is. So first of all, let me tell you what forgiveness is not. Forgiveness is not forgetting. Sometimes people hurt us so deeply that you'll never forget. When people say forgive and forget, that's a cliche. That's a bumper sticker answer. That's not possible. If someone kidnaps my son and murders him, or my stepson next week, I'll never forget that. I can forgive. If a school shooter walks into St. Louis, where my stepson goes, or Moss Bluff Elementary, where my son goes, and he dies, they die, I can forgive. But I'll never forget those things. In the same way, we have been lied to. We've been deeply hurt. We've been deeply rejected. Sometimes we'll never forget those things. We have scars. Forgiveness is not forgetting. Forgiveness is also not being close to that person again. You don't have to be best friends again. You don't have to get married again. You don't have to reconcile as lovers again. You don't have to go out to Rick and Jack's and bury the hatchet, because most of the time when we bury the hatchet, we just bury it in someone's back. Amen? So we don't have to be close to those people again in order to forgive. Forgiveness is not sweeping things under the rug because you don't like conflict. Forgiveness is not being a peacekeeper. It's being a peacemaker. A peacemaker deals with the issue. A peacekeeper just ignores it, sweeps it under the rug. In order to forgive, you don't have to have a big meeting to talk it out. Big family meeting in the living room and get everything settled. You don't have to do that to forgive. And also, it's not about restoring the relationship to how it used to be. Forgiveness is not about restoring the relationship to how it used to be. So we can all take a deep breath this morning. We can all relax, because you don't have to do any of those things to forgive. You don't have to forget today to forgive. You don't have to be close to them again to forgive. You don't have to have a big discussion and get it settled to forgive. And you don't have to restore the relationship to how it used to be in order to forgive. We have a lot of people who come to our church who've been through divorces. And a lot of times when you go through that, you realize that I can reconcile with that person as a friend, but I can't ever reconcile with that person as a lover. Because if I reconcile as a lover, we're going to have that same pain and those same heartaches again, those same battles again, but we can reconcile as friends. And so forgiveness doesn't mean that you restore the relationship to how it used to be. Forgiveness is different. So the question then becomes, what is forgiveness? What is real, true forgiveness in the Bible? What is biblical forgiveness according to God and God's Word? Now, I want to share this with you this morning. This is going to help you. This is going to give you some freedom. Remember this today. You're still with me, so I'm still with you. The first step to biblical forgiveness is simply this: letting go of your desire to get revenge. Painful conflict and drama between us and someone else is like a game of tennis. They serve towards you, you serve right back towards them. You say that about me, I'm going to say it about you. You hurt me, I'm going to hurt you. This is real, true, biblical forgiveness. If you're ready for it, say I'm ready. It's when you decide to not play that game anymore and you drop the tennis racket. Or you drop the jawbone of the donkey. I'm not going to play this game anymore. We're not going to go back and forth. You have hurt me, but I let go of my desire. I make a decision of the will to let go of my desire to pay you back, to get revenge, and to retaliate. This is why I noticed this morning on the screen. You hurt me. No, go back. Yeah, you hurt me. But instead of me hurting you back, I distance myself from you so I can stop you from hurting me again. I have to stop the bleeding, and also so I can stop myself from getting revenge. And that's why a boundary is so crucial. Forgiveness is when we do not give in to desire to pay them back. And we can apply this to any type of relationship, romantic, friendships, work relationships, dating relationships. If I want to heal and forgive, then I have to let go of my desire to get revenge. If you're still with me, say I'm still with you. Okay, let's kind of land this plane this morning. Now, if you need some help understanding what a real life, everyday boundary looks like, I want to give you some examples this morning. And then next week, we're going to go into greater detail. This morning, I just kind of want to set the table and whet your appetite. So the next thing I want you to remember today is this, and notice this on the screen. Next one. Oh, yeah, no, that one. Go back. I'm sorry. In our life, we can set emotional, material, physical, mental, and time boundaries. Now, let me explain these to you. Go to the next one. Number one, an emotional boundary would be a line around topics that you don't feel comfortable discussing, not letting others dump their heavy emotions on you all the time, or not letting others dismiss your feelings. That's an emotional boundary. Number two, a mental boundary is you protecting your freedom to have your own thoughts, your own beliefs, your own values, and your own opinions. I meet so many people who lose their identity in other people, and sometimes people want you to be just like them. When you set a mental boundary, it's you protecting the core of who you are and who God made you to be. Number three on the screen. A material boundary are lines around your possessions and your finances. It's when you get to decide how your stuff is used and how your stuff is treated. Number four on the screen. A physical boundary is when you distance yourself from people who cross lines with their unwanted comments, conversations, or physical closeness to you. Everyone look right here. We like to hug people here at the Water's Edge, don't we? Not everyone likes hugs, though. Some people have been through abuse in the past or different things in the past that's caused scars, and so sometimes people would just rather a handshake. And so if someone says, man, I don't hug, that's not them rejecting you. They have a boundary, because if they let you cross that boundary, it's going to hurt them on the inside, and you have every right to create those boundaries. Number five on the screen. A time boundary is when you decide when and how you're going to respond to their attempts to take up your personal time. And everyone look right here. Everyone in here has the right to set these boundaries. Have some respect for ourselves. Have space and distance and boundaries so we can stop the hurt and stop the bleeding. Everyone in here has the right to set those boundaries, and next week we're going to give you some very practical examples of how to apply these to your life. When I went to college, when I went to McNeese, I went at the time when I knew a lot of kids who were going at the same time that I was, because I played basketball at a lot of the area schools. And so my first semester, I recognized a lot of kids from Maryville because I played ball there, kids from DeRidder because I played ball there, kids from Singer, Westlake, Sam Houston, Lacassine, all those places because I played basketball. And I knew a lot of these kids because we would all hang out sometimes on the weekends, run into each other on Ryan Street, all that kind of stuff. We all went to church camps together. So I had a lot of friends from different areas when I went to McNeese. And I remember that one of my friends, he had a high school sweetheart. They didn't go to the school that I went to. But I remember seeing them in college. They started dating. Not too long after that, they got engaged. Not too long after that, they got married. And not too long after they got married, they had their first child. And I specifically remember them being high school sweethearts, and they're just being in love with each other. And I also remember that the young lady was extremely head over heels about the young man. I mean, just head over heels. Now, he never really let on that he was head over heels for her because he was trying to act cool, but he really, really loved her. But I remember specifically, she let everyone know, that's my man. Get your eyes off my man. Get your hands off my man. That's my man. I mean, she really loved him. And so, man, they got married. They had 3 young kids right away. And then one day he calls me out of the blue. He goes, Pastor Tony, I need to talk to you. Do you remember me? I said, yeah, I remember you. How's it going? He goes, I'm doing okay. He said, but my wife just told me last night that she wants to leave, that she needs some space and she wants to leave. I said, man, did she give you a reason? He goes, well, kind of, but it was vague and I don't understand. I said, what'd she say? She goes, well, she said that she loves me, but she's not in love with me and that she doesn't really know who she is anymore. You know all those things that people tell people when they don't want to tell you the truth? You know those things that people tell people when they don't want to tell you the truth? Yeah, I need to get out because I love you, but I'm not in love with you. That's not the truth at all. There's something you don't want them to know. And that's what you're telling them because you don't want them to know. And that's what was going on. She was telling him, I love you, but I'm not in love with you because there was something else going on that she didn't want him to know about. And so I told him, I said, man, what did she say? He goes, she said that she just needed some space. And if I give her some space that it may work out, what should I do? Because I'm so afraid of losing her and my kids going through this. He goes, I just want to fix it. I want to fix it right now. I want to talk to her. I said, don't. I said, if she said she needed space, I said, that's a boundary. If you cross it, you're never going to get her back. Guess what he did? He did not listen to me. He crossed it. She left for good. Right after that, I told him, I said, hey man, you're angry. Your family's angry. If you don't get a hold of this, it's going to cause a lot of damage in your life between you and your kids and her. And he did not listen to me. And he did not get a hold of it. And because of that, they had massive custody battles, and it deeply affected the kids and the rest of the family. After that, I sat him down. I said, listen, if you don't get a hold of your temper, bad things are going to happen. You're going to regret this. He did not listen to me. And so because of that, now families who used to love each other and have backyard barbecues on holidays and pool parties on the 4th of July and go on vacations together, now these two hate each other, and they can't stop the bleeding. And cops are called because now there's violence between these two. And the kids, years later, are still deeply, deeply affected. And the reason why is because someone needed time and space to heal. And someone else did not respect that boundary. And they kept crossing the lines. And those wounds that were fresh and bleeding never stopped bleeding because they didn't respect the boundaries. And it ended in massive devastation. Everyone look right here. That's what a boundary does. A boundary gives you time and space so your bleeding, broken heart can have time to heal. That way, the next time it gets attacked, it's stronger, and you can let go of your desire to get revenge because that's what forgiveness is. So I know what some of you are thinking this morning. Tony, I want to forgive. I want to let this go. But I just don't think that I can restore the relationship. I just don't think that I can be close to them again. I just don't think that I can have that talk. I just don't think I can't forgive. You don't have to do none of that to forgive. The one thing that you have to do according to God to forgive is back off and don't get them back anymore. Drop the jawbone, drop the racket, and refuse to play that game. And then your bleeding heart will heal. And the next time it gets attacked, you'll be that much stronger, and you can honor Jesus. Amen. Why don't you bow your heads this morning? Let me pray with you, pray for you.